Hello, stranger. This is Henry Weston's old mate, the pod, and some of you might not remember me because it's been quite some time. So I'm Phil. I'm apparently a co-host of this podcast, but I've been missing in action for quite some time. Joined again, great to see Stuart. How are you doing, buddy?
Hi, I'm really well, Phil. It was the 8th of August, the 8th of June, last time I put out something me and you had recorded together. So we probably recorded it 2 or 3 days before that. So that's pushing 5 and a bit months. But that is the way we all had things going on. I think I had a new job coming up, didn't I? I was probably just in the process, and I'd sort of said to myself, if I was to get the new job, then I'd probably have to put the podcast on the back burner. And you were off European holidaying and blah, blah, blah. But to answer your question, I'm really well, Phil. It's absolutely brilliant to see you. And I'm looking forward to catching up and then sort of talking about a few things. What have we got lined up for this chat, Phil?
Okay, so I guess, a bit of a catch up about where we've been, why I've been missing and what you've been doing in the meantime. And then you put out on socials in the week or over the weekend that you've planned a charity activity, which is going to kind of coincide with your 5th year of sobriety, the anniversary of that. But we're going to do like a physical kind of challenge. We're going to run 28 miles in 24 hours, cut that down into 7 4-mile blocks, which actually I think might just be worse than running 28 miles all in one go, because starting and stopping is going to be shit. But we'll have a little bit of a chat about that and why and how, really. So yeah, I think that's the plan for the podcast. That'll probably do us for a first one. We don't want to break a sweat with the first one back, do we? So
no, I mean I've dusted the mic off. There's probably a line from a song in there or something, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I echo your I must naively, I have no concerns about this challenge at the moment. I don't foresee it being a breeze, but I'm not at the worrying stage yet. But we'll come on to that. So let me jump in and just ask you, Phil, what on earth have you been up to since early June? Because it's not that we didn't make a conscious decision not to record. We just we never got around to it. Life seemed to throw a few things, didn't it? There was holidays, there was kids' summer holidays and everything. But what have you been up to since June, mate? What's been going on?
That I was thinking about this earlier on, actually. It's kind of like what was going on. So yeah, you're right. I had a delayed birthday holiday, which should have been happening during COVID, but obviously had to postpone it. So went cycling in Italy with some friends and my brother. Did 3 or 4 days up in the Italian Alps, which was just brilliant. Just, breath of fresh air, physically and metaphorically. So that was great, just to be able to be away, concentrating on that. Work got really busy on the build up to the summer. I was in Belfast, where most of my work is based at the moment, every week for about 6 weeks.
And you experienced plane trouble every week for about 6 weeks, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. If you remember, like back then, the cabin crews and staffing and all the rest of it clearly wasn't the individuals on the ground's fault, but there were a couple of trips of coming back from Belfast. Should have been on a 9 o'clock flight and I get home at 4 a.m. So a couple of those, which it doesn't take long to lose your sense of humor over. And then if you remember, my youngest daughter, Liv, has this ongoing issue with, she gets tumors that grow in her ear and actually into her head. So she's had 6 surgeries on that in the last 2 years. And she had quite radical surgery in July, worse than we expected it was going to be. So actually just kind of mentally, the world was becoming draining with all of that. And then, then into holidays. And then when we got back from holidays, my dad died, which is what we'll talk about a bit later on. So just there's a lot of plates spinning, a lot of juggling going on, trying to keep your head straight. And actually, you and I have discussed this quite a lot before, that this podcast is fun.
Yeah.
And it's always meant to be fun. But the moment it becomes a chore, we have to be honest and say. And trying to squeeze it into that life at that time it just became too hard. So yeah, it became apparent that I'd need to take a bit of a break. So which is what I did.
Yeah, I have put. I think I've probably put 10 or 12 podcasts out in that 5-month period, maybe a few more. But I've certainly taken a bit of time off the podcast. Not taking time off, but like you say, I've had things going on. I can't necessarily use the new job. The first month to 6 weeks, I made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to worry about recording anything. I recorded a couple of fun ones. But since then, you just mentioned juggling plates, and I always seem to have something else on the go that's taking priority over the podcast at the moment, even if that is just being a bit tired. The sort of getting an early night is tending to take priority, and looking into like next week or any given week when I've forecast to next week, it's almost like, well, I've got this. I could do Thursday, but Thursday could be an evening off. And at the moment, if I'm honest, I'm taking that evening off rather than trying to squeeze a podcast in, because the minute I start squeezing podcasts in for the sake of a podcast, people are probably going to stop listening because they're going to be dog shit. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Just reversing back, I love the fact that you're as bad as me at mixing your metaphors. Who juggles plates and spinning balls, all right?
People will love that, because an old boss of mine is a genius for that. An accidental partridge, if you want. He's an accidental genius. And I was always quick to pick him up on it. So I've just dropped the plates there, haven't I?
Yeah. Excellent.
So let's get into it, Phil. You said I'd come up with this idea. I haven't Googled it, but I've seen people have taken part in a running challenge like we're going to try and do. Obviously, my 5 years of sobriety will tick over on the 18th of December. Last year, I ran Stay Sober with Stu, and that was sort of relying on people's generosity. I managed to scrounge together a few prizes, but I didn't actually put myself through anything. Not put myself through, but I didn't challenge myself in any way apart from putting content out and organizing a few prizes. So I thought this year, I'm a man who goes out and jogs 4, 5, 6 times a week, not very far, but it's good for me. And I thought, what if we do 24 miles in 24 hours? It's something I've seen people do before over a period every 3 or 4 hours. So I thought, if we do 4 miles every 4 hours for 24 hours, then we've run 24 miles. And then I'll put that to you and someone else. Dean might do it with us, but no point not mentioning his name. And then I sort of done the maths and realized that for it to be 24 hours, it would actually be 7 if we started at 6 a.m. and then go round to the following 6 a.m. and actually run at 6 a.m. Then it would be, but that's quite good, because although we're not running it continuously, that will actually be sort of further than a marathon, won't it? So that if you like the stats, it works. So yeah, what we're planning is to run 28 miles over the course of 24 hours, 6 a.m. on the 17th of December. So my sobriety will tick over, in the middle of the run. And I put an email out to a few people just to see what they thought of the idea. And a few people got back to me and said, seems like a wonderful idea. And your email said, it seems like a great idea, and I'll come down and do it with you, you absolute lunatic. And anyone watching this YouTube video at the moment will see that the person not currently talking to you is in much better shape physically. He's been on the Keep Fit. I've been on the seafood diet. And so we might as well. We're running it for cancer, aren't we, Phil? We're going to get onto that at the end, and we're going to ask people to donate towards the GoFundMe page, and then we're going to pick, well, hopefully donate some money to cancer research, but maybe some slightly more specific cancer charities. We'll see how we get on. But this run, Phil, when I sent it to you via email, initial thoughts?
I thought, good for you, Stu, is what I thought, because my running days are long gone. Like when I was probably in my early to mid 20s, I did quite a few half marathons. I've run a marathon. When I say run, it took me a long time, but I finished. But my running days are mostly behind me. Mainly because of knees. I don't necessarily enjoy it in the same way as I maybe do going out on my bike. I started running again at the beginning of 2022 and actually was doing all right, decent speeds, up to about, I don't know, 8-10K. That was good enough for me. And then when I was in Belfast, I was running along the river, so nice and flat, and my calf muscle sounded like a piece of Velcro. It went bang like you wouldn't believe. And then, so I haven't run since February or March, I don't think. So I thought, well, good for you. I'll be happy to kind of support you from a distance and donate a bit of money. And then as you went on a little bit further, and actually you had detailed that you've got your own experience with cancer at the moment. You've lost some friends or acquaintances in the last year, and my dad died as a result of it. I was like, actually, I could probably do a little bit more than just support from a distance, and commit to it a little bit more. Give me a focus as well. You have mentioned I've kind of tried to drop a bit of weight, so that would give me one, an impetus to keep it off, and two, just maybe be a bit fitter and a bit more healthy. So it's a target for me as well. But yeah, it's that was kind of how it landed with me, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't want to mix up, because we're sort of co-hosting this, aren't we? I'm not going to. I'll pass over to you shortly. I don't want to mix up reasons for and the we're running it for cancer. I think if we sort of get to that towards the end, if I focus a bit on the running, and then you can jump in. I've got a few things written in front of me, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, Phil, and then offer my own views on it, and then we'll see what you've got. So you've signed up. You're going to come along with me. Fears, worries for the event, I should say. The 24-hour period. What are you? I mean, I've got my own concern that I have a groin injury that it's funny because a memory just popped up on Facebook. I was in the Czech Republic in 2007, 15 years ago, and I bent over to pick something up out of the fridge one day, and my groin popped like you just much described your calf. And I've had problems with it ever since. I've been to the doctor so many times. It's never been diagnosed, but every now and again, if I try and do, like one day over the summer, I ran 4 miles in the morning and 4 miles in the evening, and my groin was in pieces the next day. So my concern, my main fear is a groin injury actually stopping me. I think mentally and physically I'm pretty good, but if that groin goes, I struggle to walk.
Right. Yeah. So, that would worry. I think an injury while you're doing it, I think is of equal concern for me. I think, like I said at the very beginning, I think the actual stopping and starting, how you actually, because I think the worst thing I could probably do is go and run the 4 miles, sit down for 2 hours, do nothing at all. You're all kind of stiff and kind of your muscles are starting to contract and all of that jazz. And then you try and do it again. You're actually waiting for an injury to happen, aren't you? So it will be things like making sure that I've given enough thought to both hydration, nutrition, stretching, foam roller, all of that sort of stuff. I mean, if you had a swimming pool, Stu, I'll be in there, kind of cold water baths and all of that sort of stuff.
As you know, my only pool is an outdoor pool, Phil. So it's not heated, but I can set the paddling pool up. Fallon wouldn't mind.
You don't live that far from the beach, so we could just run down the hill and dive in there.
I don't. Yeah, yeah. You've actually just mentioned the next point that I've got. fuel, food. It's probably where I'm absolutely dog shit, because I tend to, when I used to run on a Saturday, I don't run so much on a Saturday, but Saturday used to be my long run. I used to aim for 10 miles if I wasn't working on a Saturday, and I tended to fuel those 10 miles with peanut butter and chocolate spread on toast, which I think probably isn't the worst thing. It's probably, if you were doing it, might not, if you were doing a long run mid run, but I'm not very good at that side of things. I will probably be either taking advice from you or just be doing it wrong and paying the consequences during that 24-hour period.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. I think there is going to be so one of our podcasts from quite a while ago now was with my brother, who has got quite a lot of expert knowledge around nutrition. So we'll be tapping him up. But I think the runs themselves, 4 miles, we can do without food and water for those bits themselves. But in between, I think it's about having food prepared.
Yeah.
Rather than just kind of hoping that the magic's going to happen when you get in from the run and you open a cupboard and like the right food is there. So I think it's about, preparing rice cakes, making sure that there is white meat around, making sure that green vegetables, which, full of protein, which will convert to carbohydrate very quickly, that sort of stuff, and drinking the right stuff. Not just water, but maybe we'll get some energy gels because we just want to bring the carbohydrate level up and that sort of thing. So from a nutrition point of view, I think it's just making sure that we actually have stuff in Tupperware in the fridge, that you can open the fridge, the magic does happen, but it's actually been prepared and you've got something to eat. And endurance events rely on you eating little and often, every 20-30 minutes. So
I've been doing that for weeks.
Yeah. So that sort of thing I think is fine. I actually had this completely weird fear that we've set out our time scales, and one of those runs, we've got a 10 p.m, a 2 p.m, and a 6 a.m slot. No, sorry, 10 p.m, 2 a.m, 6 a.m. I'm worried I'm going to oversleep.
Do you know, and one of the things, although we'll be policing this ourselves, but realistically, I want to be very hot that we will set off, on the hour. We won't be setting off at 1 minute past. Realistically, I mean, there's nothing to stop us, but I don't want it to get to the point where 3 or 4 runs in, we're setting off at 1/4 and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
I mean, we need to, and that, because I mean, the route it's a 4-mile loop, sort of up it's a bit hilly. It's through a couple of sets of woods. So it's going to be dark for a lot of the run, but it's about it's a 45 to 50 minute run for me. I run at those 10. If I was running on the flat, I'll run a 9-minute mile, 10-minute mile over here. But then because it is just a bit uphill, a bit down dale, it's about sort of 10 and a half, 11 minutes for me. So it's 45 minutes. That's an hour realistically, isn't it? That's another half an hour getting back from the run. And if we want to be leaving dead on, we're going to be, if we are asleep, we're going to be up 20 minutes before to make sure. So there's not actually, what is there really, 2 and a bit hours in between each run?
Yeah.
Which will fly by.
Which will fly by. We'll just have to make sure there's loads of films downloaded.
Yes. Well,
watch a film in between.
I am a subscriber to my wife's, not discussed because she watches a lot of it, but we've got all of the subscriptions available. I have been wondering.
I can't wait to watch Babe Station.
my next point, and it sounds funny because it's running, but in the past I've been a man who likes a gadget, shall we say. I used to buy all the golf gadgets. Cricket gear isn't necessarily gadgets, but I like new cricket gear. So I've just got kit written down. Is this an excuse for me to buy any sort of running kit, Phil? Or you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I think from a gadget point of view, I think the only thing that is kind of like a necessity these days is kind of the GPS device. So whether it's like, I've got a Garmin watch, so whether you've got a watch,
only ever use my phone,
whatever. So making sure that that's all charged up, ready to go. We also don't want to run any more than we need to. So I don't want to do 4.1 miles. I want to do 4 miles and then stop. Thank you.
I think it's 4.06. Right. So if I stop at the top of my road on the way back, it's 4 miles.
Right. Okay. So there's that. But I think also there is also the serious side, kit wise. in terms of one will be running at least 3 of the sessions in pitch black.
Yeah.
The late afternoon jobby will be 6 o'clock, so that will, it'll still be dark at that point.
I think 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. are realistically the only daylight runs.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of making sure that you've got we're lit up like Christmas trees.
Yeah.
Is going to be important. So whether you got one of those kind of keep a straight face, whether you got one of those strap-ons that sit on your chest, that glow, that works. You can buy little hats with a light on the front.
Can I interrupt? If I put glowing strap-ons into Google now, I'd love to see what comes up.
Well, you'll have some explaining to do, I think. And then there's also, just from a kit point of view, I think we also need to think that it's gonna be December.
Yeah.
It's gonna be either cold and or wet. Yeah. So actually having enough kit that you're not, this won't bring nice images to people's minds, but chafing is actually going to be something to think about. So actually having dry kit, maybe not for having enough kit so that you can dry it, so that we're not kind of causing ourselves more pain.
I think realistically, I mean, we'll be setting off from my house, but yeah, I will certainly want to have 3 outfits probably ready, and probably realistically 3 pairs of shoes, because if we go out in the pouring rain for an hour running, I don't think that set of shoes is, even if I've got the radiators and the stuff set up next to the radiators, I don't think we're going to dry a pair of wet shoes in between 2 sessions. No,
absolutely. So yeah, there's a risk there of, like I say, a bit of chafing, a bit of blister kind of risk, isn't there, with wet shoes and all the rest of it. Yeah. Obviously nipples are really important for men.
I've never struggled with it. Well, I have nipples, but I've never struggled with them.
Well, I guess when it's cold and wet, and if you're out often, then there's a risk then that there might be a little bit of nipple damage.
I'm gonna have to buy a glowing strap-on and some nipple cream.
Nipple tassels, I think, given that it's Christmas, would be the way forward. But yeah, that's about it from a kit point of view, and obviously just making sure that we're 4 miles again an hour. But I think as the runs go on, as the number of times we've been out goes on, we will cool down quicker. So gloves, whether you've got running tights or whatever it is that making sure that we're warm enough to actually not cause ourselves an injury is important.
Training, Phil. I kind of accidental. I will be. It's what is it? 5.5, 6 weeks away. This run, 5 or 6 weeks tomorrow, I guess, or Saturday. I plan to just plod on as at the moment, because the way my job has changed and my time between when I get home from work and picking my daughter up has reduced, the free time I have, and I tend to be working most Saturday mornings. So my 10-mile Saturdays have just become 4-mile Saturdays and 3 or 4 miles. I run the route we will be doing 4 or 5 times a week and not much else. I can't remember that I went out and did nearly 6 miles a little while ago, but I haven't run over 6 miles in probably 2 months. I don't plan to change that. That's probably what I will do, because I would do it anyway. You might have to. Do you plan to stick to a plan, or just get out when life allows?
So not necessarily a formal plan, but I need to change what I'm doing to be conditioned to run. So most of my exercise is cycling. It's low impact, that sort of stuff. So actually being in a position where you can run and then not have stiff legs an hour and a half later is important. So I need to condition myself a bit more that so that my legs are used to using their quads and hamstrings and calves in a way that it's not used to. So yeah, I went out for a run yesterday for the first time since February, March, and I'm a little bit stiff today, but I deliberately went kind of very, very slow and not very far, just because I knew I probably wouldn't run today, but I also don't want to risk not being able to run tomorrow. So start to build it up every other day. I'm away with work all next week, so I'm taking my running kit with me. I'll be down by the river, so it's nice and flat, and just try and get, probably less about distance and more about time at the moment. Just half an hour is good enough in the early stages of training.
No, brilliant.
Physically, I'm probably fit enough to run the distance fairly often. Being able to do that repetitively over 24 hours would be a challenge, but it's the conditioning, really.
Yeah.
I don't want I don't want to be in pain after the first run. So
yeah. We've talked physically, how, fueling ourselves, that's sort of the physical side of things. We talked about fears, that's the mental side of things. But that's sort of talking about now, what do we think what can we look to or expect to experience, Phil? I'm going to sort of cross over two things here. I'm going to talk about mental health and the sleep side of things. I'm a notoriously not great sleeper. It takes me a while to get off to sleep, and I don't sleep for long periods because I tend to get up for a wee, but I also just generally don't sleep for long periods. Even if I don't get up for a wee, I'll regularly wake up during the night. If I have 7 hours sleep, I'll probably wake up 3 times in that 7 hours. So I'm worried that getting that sleep, but after that 10 p.m. run, sleeping between 10 p.m. and the 2 a.m. run, and then sleeping between the 2 a.m. and the final 6 a.m. run. I don't know if I'm ever going to if I'll get to much sleep, but a lack of sleep will probably lead to me being a bit grumpy. Any other mental, not problems? What else could we expect to experience mentally? There's going to be highs and lows, isn't there?
I think there is, and I think actually just I think a conversation that you and I are going to have if we're doing all of it and we're going to do it all together is kind of actually accepting that the highs and lows are going to happen, and that's okay. And at 2 in the morning, when I call you a dick for kind of going off too quick, don't take it personally. yeah. And
there's no danger I'll be going off too quickly on any of you. I'm going to turn up and you're just going to run the first lot in 28 minutes or something.
But yeah, I think actually just accepting that those things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And we make sure that our friendship doesn't suffer as a result of any kind of ill feeling. That's not the right word. Heated discussions or anything like that, or just even grumpiness. Just kind of like, I'm not looking forward to getting up at 1:45 in the morning, running 4 miles, and hoping that everything goes swimmingly. Yeah. So all that sort of thing will, and motivation will wane. We'll set out at 6 o'clock on that first morning, and everything will be hunky dory, and that's great. I can imagine by 6 in the evening, it would have lost its shine, and
definitely.
And by 2 in the morning, we'll be like, I can't wait for this to be over.
I just want to get back to a point you made quickly, Phil, because you mentioned that, like, the acceptance that there are going to be probably, I would have thought, more lows than highs, to be honest, after the initial. So we do that first run, the 2 or the 3 of us, maybe someone else joins us. And then we've got the 2 walk-in slots. We're opening 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. up for friends, family, anyone who wants to come along and walk the route with us. But after that, it could be a bit of a struggle. And I just wanted me and my wife, me and Erica, went to watch Sir Ranulph Fiennes. He was in Thanet giving a talk last year. And obviously the one of the world's greatest ever adventurers and endurance adventurer, if you like. And he commented, and exactly the point you made, Phil, that he on these treks across the Arctic or to the poles, and even his time in the army when he was in Africa, and cooped up in small places with the same people for extended periods of time. And he said it was a skill he had, and the people who coped in these situations best were the ones who knew or went into these things with their eyes wide open. They knew that Stuart was going to be grumpy at 2 o'clock, and I'll give him a tap on the bum and say, come on. And he's liable to either turn around and smack my hand away or just tell me to fuck off. But he'll still be there next to me. So, yeah, that was, yeah, our friendship won't suffer, but we might not like each other quite as much for that period of time. And if our friend and previous guest on this podcast, Dean Oliver, does come along and do the whole event for us, we know Dean well enough, and he will certainly throw another personality into the mix. That might be worth filming and selling to Channel 4 at some point.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think trying to go into this thinking I'm going to be happy and enjoy the whole thing is going to set us up for failure.
Yeah.
And actually just ride the roller coaster.
Yeah.
And feel every bit of it, and actually feeling upset and grumpy and tired and those sorts of things. I think actually more than anything else, the reason why we're doing it for a good reason, for a good cause.
Yeah.
And that should be the motivator that just makes sure that we get through it, and everything else can be like, we'll have a conversation over Christmas about if Dean's been a knobhead, and we'll talk about that, and that'll be fine. Not that I'm expecting it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
You mentioned the cause, Phil, and I did set this up or thought I'd like to do it, and I'm really thankful and appreciative that you and other people, I've already got a few people who are going to come along and walk one of the slots, possibly two of the slots with us, but I decided I wanted to do this for cancer. We've mentioned it many times on previous podcasts. My dad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. I get it wrong. I think it's 3 years ago now. 3 years. I think it's 3 years ago, possibly 2. But anyway, he was given 6 to 8 months to live, longer than 6 to 8 months ago. And he's still battling on. He's not going to leave us imminently, but realistically, we're going to get another Christmas with Dad. And we've said it the last couple. Is this going to be his last one? I don't know, but realistically, it could be. He's battling on amazingly well. The world lost a friend of mine, Dave Scoggins, this year. Far too young. He was, taken far too quickly. Very recently, a gentleman by the name of Ashley Breeze, who I only knew socially from the pub, but he passed away at the age of 41. I think, speaking to people who know him better or knew him better than I did, he passed in about 5 to 6 weeks from diagnosis to death. I didn't know Ash very well, but it had an impact on me, because anytime somebody who's younger than you leaves this earth, it brings your own mortality into question, doesn't it? And I remember hearing that news, and my first thought was, have I done enough in my life? It sounds silly, but have I done enough that if I went in 6 weeks' time, have I done? I'm not worried about leaving a mark on the world, but is it worth worrying about that 100 quid I'm worrying about spending at Christmas? Or is it worth worrying about what my car MOT is going to? It's blooming not. I mean, we do have to worry about things, but I've gone off topic there a bit, Phil, but we're doing it for cancer. You have had a terrible experience recently. You mentioned it at the start of the pod. You lost your father to cancer. Would you be able to sort of, I don't want to say briefly, could you talk us through the last 2 or 3 months for yourself and your family?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it does kind of, actually talking about it does really, really help, but it also brings into focus why the running event is really important. So Dad was diagnosed. Dad was suffering from some abdominal symptoms early 21, and it turned out after kind of ignoring the symptoms for quite some time, went to the GP, did some tests, all the rest of it, then went for a scan, and it turns out he's got a tumor the size of, I don't know, a tennis ball in his bowel. So all of a sudden it was kind of like action stations. That piece of bowel was removed, quite a big section was removed, but because he had ignored it for quite some time, the diagnosis was stage 4 bowel cancer with liver spread to start with. So the liver was stage 4 as well. And I knew myself, because of the job that I do, stage 4 liver cancer is unrecoverable. It's a death sentence. It's terminal, and you're then looking at how long you've got left. So Dad had gone through kind of doing his chemo and all the rest of it. And actually, the first round of chemo, so he had like 12 cycles. That first 12 cycles in the first round, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
He kind of breezed through it. He was like, yeah, I'm doing all right. I haven't lost my hair. And bearing in mind that he lived near where you live, and I live in Swansea, so it's almost 300 miles. So because of COVID and all the rest of it, visits were at a minimum because he was immunosuppressed. We didn't want to risk seeing him and giving him COVID. So we would talk frequently on the phone. How's it going? Yeah, going okay. Haven't lost my hair. Weight's okay. Feel okay, actually. Blah, 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 blah. And then as the cycles went on, he started to kind of lose energy, but not his hair. And then it kind of got to the point where all of a sudden, like he'd been in for scans, and they'd said, actually, when it's not making that much progress. So what we want to do is put you on this like industrial strength chemotherapy. So but it is going to knock you for 6.
Yeah.
And it really, really did. And it got to the point where he had 4 doses of it, and he'd said, I'm not sure that I can do anymore. So again, our conversations continued over the phone and things. But I hadn't seen him for the best part of a year. So I saw him August 2020. We met him outside for a coffee. And then we were going, 21, sorry. I saw him August 21. And then we were going on holiday as a family. And we always tend to go to France, Belgium, Holland, somewhere like that, stop off at my mum's, see my dad while we're there. And I hadn't seen him for a year, but spoken frequently. And he was quite a big chap at one point. He was like 17, 18 stone. When I saw him, he was about 11 stone. He looked skeletal. And that actually seeing that, and I've got that memory burnt into my mind of seeing him walking up the street to us, that really scared me.
Yes.
Because, pre-holiday, I was about 15 stone. Well, or coming up, approaching 15 stone, I reckon. And kind of, I was sat on holiday for 2 weeks, eating all the wrong things, drinking as much as possible, but thinking I really do need to do something about this, because, if cancer's going to get you, it's going to get you, but there are some environmental things you can do, like not smoke, perhaps be less
good
fat.
housekeeping.
Yeah. So that really kind of spurred me into it. But we got back from holiday in middle of August, and he became really unwell. And we got a call from his wife first week of September, towards the end of the first week of September, and said he's in the hospital. He isn't actually that great. Really worried about him. Can you come and see him? So travelled over, and we got to spend his last 4 days at the bedside, 2 of which I reckon he was awake and able to converse. So we did all the conversations that you really should do when people are alive, like telling him that we loved him and that we're proud of him and, miss him and all of those sorts of things. And then, he died on the 12th of September. And yeah, it was kind of like, I don't know, it just makes you reevaluate your world a little bit. Making sure the way that I have conversations with friends and family, people will notice that there is a way that I say goodbye to people now, because you just don't know when the next time is coming. And me and my brother always hug when we see each other and stuff like that, but we never give the verbals in terms of, Chris, I do love you, and that's important.
Yes.
And it feels weird because it's not, as a family, we're quite reserved. Sorry, within that side of my family. With my girls, absolutely not. They know exactly that. But my brother, it's kind of like never really been there and done that. So that's kind of a change, because I don't know that that was said often enough, and then it became hard to say when he was dying, and it felt like, yeah,
Yes.
a
Yeah.
little bit
Well,
too late.
I should say, because I did pop over to the crematorium to pay my respects, and you and your brother both put on a sterling, fantastic performance. Talking wonderfully about your dad and his life, and he would have been amazingly proud of the effort that both of you did, Phil. So, not saying well done. You don't need me to say well done, but I thought it was wonderful. Let's
Thank
move on before we both get choked up.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I do think that's important. Sorry, just to say that, you know, I feel really fortunate that we had 4 or 5 days with him before he died, and you've got a run up with your dad. You know that time is limited, but you've got this run up with him, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, just make it. It sounds kind of Hallmark greetings card sort of tripe, but having the opportunity to make sure that there's no regrets after he's gone, I think is, that's the only piece of advice I could ever give to anybody ahead of a bereavement. Is
I think it's wonderful, and it's something, realistically, from what the doctors said about my dad, he shouldn't be here now. His grit and determination, maybe a bit of good, his cancer has spread a little bit into a kidney. He was told a good few months ago that the lung cancer was, beyond, they'd done everything they could treatment wise. They have put him through a little bit of radiotherapy at the moment. He's going every evening this week to help with hopefully some pain relief from the kidney that is giving him real trouble now. But yeah, I mean, what you've just said, I mean, in my old job, I made sure, because I used to drive past mum and dad's house, not drive past, but I used to drive along the road. So my shortest way home didn't go past mum and dad's, but I only had to add 200 yards to go past their house. And realistically, if dad wasn't dying of cancer, 2 or 3 weeks would go by and I probably wouldn't have called in. Because, I love my mum and dad and I'd see them as much as I can, really, but that's just not, I wouldn't have called in to see my dad, but I made sure I did. And he's not, my brother's recently welcomed another grandchild. So dad has 2 granddaughters now. He loves them to pieces, but he's not a cuddly grandfather, but we make sure we go and see him so that Fallon knows who dad was. She's 6.5 now. She will know who he was, but she knows granddad is grandfather, as he likes to be called. She knows he is unwell. She doesn't know he's a dying man, but she will remember him. How fondly, I don't know, because every time we go around there, he gives her a bollocking for something or another. But it's hard, isn't it? Because I guess, I don't know for you, I can't speak for you, Phil, but I guess when dad leaves us, there will be a regret or two, even if we think we've done anything. But yeah, it's what you say. It's great, and we do. I'm one of three boys, and I'm the only one in the UK. Paul is back soon, and Alex was hopefully back for Christmas, but probably looks more like Easter. But I think as a family, we are a bit more conscious of making the effort, and that's a bit of a shame, really, isn't it? Because should it take a diagnosis of cancer to bring a family, well, not necessarily closer together, but I certainly was guilty of not calling in as much as I should. But there we go. That's why we're running, Phil. Everyone in the What Does Cancer Affect? 1 in 2 of us we either get it or have to deal with it with a close family member. The stats are shocking, horrific. We'll do what we can. We've set a target of £1,200. I think we're at about 120. I've got £15 in my work bag from 2 people I copped in the pro shop earlier. So the members over at Westgate and Birchington, they're going to get us. I found last year that there was an initial sort of donation in the first 2 or 3 days. We've had that this year, and then it kind of, as the event got closer, I think people started to donate. Listening to this pod, if you could, if you can, please donate. Don't if if you want to wait for us to finish the event or die trying, please do. But if you want to donate in the build up, the link to the GoFundMe page will, of course, be in the comment section in all of the socials that this goes out on. Phil, where are we at? I haven't really prepped you for this, but where are we at with the podcast? Because the podcast isn't, we've always said it's going to be fun. We will try and get together a bit more, but we're not, this isn't the great comeback. We're probably not realistically going to get together every week at the moment, are we?
No, probably not getting together every week, but I think we need to probably commit to, because I think the thing, while my world did get busy back for the last 6 months, there is a bit like I've missed the regular catch-ups. Like while we didn't.
So have I.
Yeah. So while we didn't, and we caught up for a barbecue in the summer as well before I went on holiday and stuff. So I have seen you and we've spoken, but actually these have always been therapeutic and a really important period in the week that I've really enjoyed. So maybe it can't be weekly, but it will be regularly.
Yeah.
And whatever that regular looks like, and we'll do something. We'll do something around the run as well. I've now got now talking of strap-ons and all the rest of it. This is a visual joke. If you're not on, it's not even a joke. It's a real thing.
You're going to make me jealous now.
If you're on audio, you won't see this, but I now have a mobile recording device, so we can make a podcast episode out of the horrendous journey that we're going to go on, which will be good fun just for posterity more than
I think we should probably, I mean, in my head, I'm thinking probably after the 2 p.m., probably after the 10 a.m. walking stop that realistically might not finish till 11:30 because there might be a few little people and old people with us. So I think maybe we host people at my house for a pot of chili or a pot of soup or something. And I was thinking that maybe after that 2 p.m. slot, we go live on Twitter and see if anyone wants to see me and you talk about blisters and who's got the biggest, most shiniest strap on and how we're getting on. And then I don't know what else, but maybe after the 10 p.m. slot, me and you sit down and record something that then goes out later, if we're still talking by then. But
that'll make a good podcast episode anyway. If there's me and you just bickering like old men, that'll be quite funny. So no, I agree. We should do something like that. Just a bit of a mini documentary type podcast of kind of how it's going and what's happening and all the rest of it. That'll be good. And then as we approach the new year, we'll have plenty of time on this run to be planning out what we're going to do for the next year, and we really should. We'll keep it up. Yeah,
I mean, I think there is obviously my sobriety. I haven't given up on being a spokesperson for recovering alcoholics and sobriety. I just I've had to commit my time elsewhere, but I'm not going to speak out of turn or say anything that's got me in trouble here, but I've certainly experienced in my new job. My eyes have been opened to a few things that I think would make some good content with regards to male mental health and male mental well-being. So there is, I haven't blogged for ages. I don't think I'll go back to blogging. I don't have the time, but I do have the time realistically to sit down and record every 7 to 10 days with yourself and try and get something out. So again, Phil, it's been great to see you. Anyone listening to this, I probably should have mentioned it at the start. Maybe I'll have to squeeze something in on the edit. The link to the GoFundMe page. We're trying to raise £1,200. We're going to donate to cancer research, and depending on how the fundraising goes, if we can target a few more specific charities. But every penny we raise, the way the GoFundMe page works is you donate £30. Then the GoFundMe take a tiny percentage. It's about £1 in every 30 or whatever. I top that up from my bank. So every penny that you guys donate, The little bit that GoFundMe take, I top it up. So all of your donations are going in. And then, you know, I'm very transparent. Last year, I screenshotted everything, not my bank account with it, but every penny and where it went. So, you know, not that anyone would worry about me being a dodgy geezer, but please be rest assured that every penny you donate will be going to a cancer charity. Phil, it's been absolutely wonderful. Anything you want to squeeze in before we say goodbye?
I guess just very quickly is cancer research is a very broad, nebulous description of the charity that we're going to donate to. So whether that's Cancer Research UK or whether there are other charities, I think if anybody actually has any suggestions of kind of charities that do some really good work in and around cancer, I know that, you know, where my dad was getting his treatment at the Viking unit in Margate, they've got a charitable fund as well. So that will actually go to patients and those sorts of things. So there's plenty of ideas and plenty of options, but equally, if anybody does have suggestions of cancer charities that do some really, really good work that actually people feel the benefit from, we'd like to hear you.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who's reached out with and donated so far, and we look forward to many future donations. Phil, I've joined you and you've joined me on Henry Weston's Old Mate the podcast. I've loved it. I hope you have. Thank you for being so open and honest. And it's been really good to be back, mate.
Yeah, it has been good to be back. Cheers, Stu.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.